So yes, you set out to see if there was a green industrial future for Scotland,
Yeah.
and you've written a report, you've got it with you. So what did you find?
Well, you know, the starting point to this, I actually published a report last year about Scotland's green energy potential, and what we argued in that is that we could increase our output fivefold. What this report does is take that on and talks about how we build the supply chain. And I guess everything that's happened since then, the war in Ukraine that's taken place, the desire for energy security. So there's a real race you can see in North America, you can see in Europe, and we've got to make sure that Scotland is in the right place to benefit from that. We'll be about 5% of the global offshore wind market, so people don't have to come and invest in Scotland. We need to make sure that they want to do that, that we can get the supply chain jobs. We don't make the mistakes, if I may say so, that we made with oil and gas, that we get the full benefit of this. And I think there are some encouraging signs already. We've seen the investment by Sumitomo in a cabling manufacturing facility in the Highlands, but we need more of that. And what we're saying to the Scottish Government is that we need to work collaboratively with those in industry, with those in academia, make sure we're driving the innovation, get the key people around the table, and the First Minister to host a strategic industrial council. You know, when I look in the rearview mirror, and I've referenced a book by a chap called Anderson that shows that Scotland has lost relative population share every decade in the UK since the 1850s. We have to change the record. We have to show that we're serious about sustainable economic growth. Green energy transforms our ability to grow, and it's about how we deliver on that, how we also benefit from our academic excellence, which is the other theme which is contained within the report.
OK, so people will want to know what a green energy future means for North Sea oil. We've seen Labour mooting plans to ban new exploration. Do you agree with that?
I think what we need to do is actually show people we have a proper roadmap, Anna. And of course, oil and gas is an important part of the mix over the course of the short to medium term. What we're talking about...
new exploration?
Well, look, what we need to do, I think what we need to do is look at the demand side of things, and we need to look at how we ramp up green energy production. I mean, I've talked about that fivefold increase by 2050. If we can decarbonise our economy, we will reduce our dependency on oil and gas. And that's really the question that we need to ask. And then it's a question of what is the outturn in oil and gas production. We need to make sure that we transition effectively. We've got a lot of jobs in oil and gas, 70-odd thousand. In the energy report that I published last year, we talked about getting to 325,000 jobs in green energy. So it's about that transition and how we actually, over that journey, we reduce our dependency on oil, but it remains a key part of the mix over the short to medium term.
But reducing your dependency on North Sea oil, is that a tacit admission that independence is not looking like it's on the cards, certainly in the short term, given that the money from North Sea oil was always a key part of the economic plan for independence?
Look, at the end of the day, I think there is that question about what happened to the bounty from North Sea oil. There was 350 billion of tax receipts, and where has it gone? What we're trying to do in this paper is to make sure that we can deliver that sustainable economic growth in Scotland, that we can get the investment, we can drive up productivity, we can get the tax receipts. And I think through that, give confidence to people in Scotland that we have got the vision as to what an economy of an independent Scotland will look like. You know, in some respects, I would turn this around and say, where is the industrial strategy for the UK? It doesn't exist. Here is an effective plan, and it's multifaceted. You can talk about offshore wind. I want to see a plan for tidal, for example, and I'm calling on the UK government, because it has reserve powers, to make sure we support that industry. Let's get the investment in carbon capture and storage. You know, one of the things I talked about, if I may, just briefly, in academia, we bring lots of students over to Scotland. We train them, we educate them, and then we ask them to go home. That's clearly insanity. We need to make sure that we've got the talent that can help drive our economy, and we need to have an effective post-study work visa. So there's so many things that we can do, take the right decisions that will allow us to deliver economic growth. OK, and I'm sure that the government will be poring over your report. In the meantime, though, you've announced you're stepping down at the next election. 6 other SNP MPs have actually followed you in making the same decision. Is this a crisis for the SNP? No, it's not. And I think hopefully you can see this morning the enthusiasm I have for this. I want to make sure, although I'm not going to be an MP, I'm still playing a part. I want to support the First Minister in the delivery of his economic plans, because that's what it will be. You know, I've been in the SNP since the 1970s. And I want to make sure in the not too dim and distant future that we finish that journey to independence. And while I may not be an MP, I'm still certainly going to be playing my full part in that.
Your colleague Mari Black said she was stepping down as an MP, partly because of what she described as a toxic working environment. You've obviously worked at Westminster as well. Do you recognise what she's saying?
I think it's been a challenging period, everything that we've gone through, Brexit in particular, and the whole atmosphere in the place. We need to make sure that people can come to Westminster, can do their job. They can do that with respect and trust across the place. And it, you know, I'd say it's quite sad that we're losing people, young people effectively, of talent such as Mari. We need to make sure that Parliament can be a place that's welcoming to people and they can show their talents to the fullest extent.
And as you leave, I wonder if you can reflect on some of the rules in Westminster, because today our Westminster Accounts is looking at second jobs for MPs.
Yes.
So we're going to take a look at yours. All in the public domain, these figures, and of course all completely within the rules. But you have done 31 hours of work in this current Parliament at an average of £1,200 per hour. Do you think the rules are appropriate?
Well, Anna, when I came into Parliament, I had 2 non-executive directorships, 2 chairmanships, and I said at the last election that I would wind those up. And I did that very, very early in this Parliament. I think I was done by the end of the first quarter of that Parliament. So these were kind of legacy issues, if you like. There is, I think, a legitimate debate about earnings of MPs. I've actually just gone on to the Committee of Standards in Public Life, and I'm sure all of these things that we will reflect on, because I think it is important that the public can have trust in those that they send to Parliament.
Well, yes, and what we found is that MPs with second jobs have an average wage of £233 per hour. That's 17 times the national average. Do you think that will sit comfortably with people?
You know, you've seen, obviously, the likes of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss earn eye-watering sums of money on the speaking circuit, benefiting from the position that they had as Prime Minister. And I think, rightly, people are appalled at that kind of behaviour. I think it's important that we can trust our politicians, and I think people have to look very carefully at what they do. Being an MP is a very important job. It is a full-time job. Of course, at the end of the day, you're accountable to your electorate when you stand in front of them at the next election. I think most MPs do work very hard. It is an all-consuming job. But yeah, absolutely, let's make sure that there's full transparency in this, that people are not abusing the privileges that's put in them as members of Parliament. Very quickly, you mentioned Boris Johnson. What do you make of the fact that his older phone is not being handed over at the moment to the COVID inquiry? We're told he doesn't remember the password. I mean, I find this extraordinary that he can't remember the passcode for his phone, really. You know, I think we need to have that full transparency in this inquiry, and I think it's important that these messages that are on that phone are accessible to the inquiry. OK, Ian Blackford, thanks very much indeed for coming in. We appreciate your time this morning. My pleasure, thank you.